interesting video. I have an interesting video for you. Good afternoon, I'm the Mainly Digger, and this video is about Pemaquid Point and the 4 forts that were on Pemaquid Point. Not only is it about the 4 forts, it's about the French and Indian Wars in Maine. During that time, during the 16, 17, 1800s, Maine was a very conflict-filled place. I would have hated to be a settler. I would have hated to be an English settler because you're constantly moving out, getting attacked, raided, moving back, going to different places, trying to find where where the best protection is. So many times that in Maine, it wasn't just one French and Indian war, it was multiple different French and Indian wars. And I go over that in the video. It's set at different times and they're called different things, but it was a very Maine. Our borders weren't really set between French, English, Canadians, Canada. There was no real border at that time. It was just a settlement. And the English wanted to colonize that. They wanted to move further, and the French and Indians didn't want that. The British at the time were they would cheat. They cheated the Native Americans out of land, out of anything they could. They were pushing the Native Americans back because their agenda was to take over the coastline so they can further trade with and make money from trade. So their agenda was push the Native Americans back away from the coast. Native Americans didn't want to do that. So that is the conflict. That is the conflict. Best explained, easiest explained is that is the conflict. The French were here before the English and they already established themselves in trade and established themselves with the local tribes, which were huge. Like the Native Americans in Maine were huge, and still are huge, but they were a confederation. A large confederation. And if they went to war, if they raided like that, you're bringing a lot of people on certain amount of areas. And most of the time they were just wood structures. They were stockade houses. And I mean, they worked, but they also didn't work. So there's 4 different forts at Pemaquid Point on the same area, on the same plot of land, over and over and over. So one gets burnt, another one goes up. That one gets burnt or taken down, another one goes up. And that itself is that is the story of Maine. Like, it just is. It's an interesting story. I had a hard time doing this video because it's hard to explain the different conflicts, and it's hard to explain the different relationships between England and French and the Native Americans, because there's different. Since the Native Americans were a confederation, there's different Native American tribes. That didn't click with the French, but they still worked with them, or they worked with the English, but they're still part of the tribe. And then there's it all ends with the English screwing over the Native Americans, not gaining any allies from the Native Americans, and then the Native Americans attacking the English. Best way I can describe it, the English didn't really work out in Maine that well. We're still a state. Mainly Digger out. Enjoy my video. I hope you're feeling well. Interesting video. I have an interesting video for you.
Pemaquid Point is a gorgeous spot in Maine. All of Maine is pretty, but gorgeous. The lighthouse is a well-known lighthouse and a well-visited spot during the summertime. Pemaquid Point has always been a gorgeous spot, but it is strife with conflict. If you follow Southside Road all the way to the left, you'll notice that there is Fort Henry and Pemaquid Beach Park. Also the beach. It's a gorgeous beach. But there's 4 different forts that stood where Fort William Henry is, including Fort William Henry. To explain these forts throughout the years, you have to understand the different French and Indian War conflicts that happened in Maine during the 16, 17, and 1800s. And also the struggle between England and France at those times. Couldn't find any pictures of this fort or any if they're digging at this fort or whatever. But I did find this, that's all. It's not a well-known fort, and it was just a trading post. And at that point in time, it's important to bring this up. At that point in time, trade with the Native Americans was pretty good. They were friendly, everybody was friendly. But this started the push of English into trying to colonize Maine. The fort was not actually brought down by Native Americans. It was brought down by a pirate, Dixie Bull. This attack, this raid, would cost him his life. Soldiers came up from Boston, and he was caught. The next photo is remnants of, or ruins of, one of the forts that was there. But the next fort that was constructed was Fort Charles. In 1677, the British decided to make an outpost, more of a fort than an outpost, in hopes of colonizing Maine. This fort they called Fort Charles. It was made up of a wood perimeter, wood fence, and a wooden stockhouse. This fort, Fort Charles, was burnt during the King William's War. Very important to understand that the English were pretty much cheating the Native Americans out of everything and wanted to push them inland away from the coast so the British could trade without a fear of being attacked. The French had already established networks and connections with the local tribes. There's also an incident connected to Madison, Maine during this time, or that happened during this time. Fort William Henry was built in 1692. After the destruction of past forts, the British made this fort out of stone. Most of the fort's stone embankments are still present because 4 years later, the siege of Pemaquid Point took place. During King William's War, the siege of Pemaquid took place. In 1696, Captain Pasco Chubbs surrendered the fort. Fort William Henry wasn't burnt to the ground because it was made of stone. It was taken out by naval ships. The remnants of that fort are still there. Some of the ruins are still there. A lot of it was reconstructed in 1908 or 1906. Here is a reconstruction of Fort Frederick, which went up after Fort William Henry and saw no combat at all. And this is just a picture of the old fort. Most people know it as Fort Henry or Fort William Henry. It is an awesome location to go to. Pemaquid Point is just gorgeous. So before I yammer on about the nickel, I want to talk about Operation ReBoot. Operation ReBoot Outdoors is an organization, a nonprofit organization for veterans to get them out into the woods, to take them out hunting and fishing. It is ran by Dan and Nicole Waite. If you are interested in Operation ReBoot Outdoors, they have a YouTube channel where they discuss Maine outdoors and how they help veterans. They discuss their organization, and they have a coffee time or a coffee talk that happen. They have it every week. Different veterans come on. Dan talks about his struggles coming back from Iraq. Dan has 2 combat deployments. He's an Army veteran. I'm not pushing any merchandise, and I get none of this profits. All the profits go to Operation ReBoot, and it's a non-profit.